Thanks for tuning in. You're watching ARIRANG News. It's 2 p.m. here in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The stories we're tracking for you at this hour. With activists calling on North Korea to apologize for sinking the South Korean warship Cheonan 5 years ago, Pyongyang says there's no need because the regime was not behind the attack. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says Korea's economic recovery will likely continue, but cautioned that it also faces short-term variables such as the U.S. Federal Reserve's rate hike. And former Olympic medalist Park Tae-hwan is banned for 18 months after failing drug tests. He will miss this year's World Championships but may be able to compete in the Rio Olympics next year. Our top story this afternoon, North Korea has once again denied any involvement in the sinking of a South Korean warship 5 years ago, and because of this, calls for an apology are redundant. The North's National Defense Commission said Tuesday that it will not apologize in exchange for the lifting of South Korean sanctions imposed following the torpedo attack on the Cheonan in 2010. The commission called Seoul's demand for an apology nonsense, adding that the sanctions must be removed for the sake of better inter-Korean ties. Now, this latest statement out of Pyongyang comes just a day after a South Korean activist group said it would halt anti-North Korea leaflet launches for good if the regime took responsibility for the Cheonan sinking. Ji Myung-gil has more.
A group of activists led by North Korean defectors have called off plans to fly some 500,000 anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border this week. But there's a catch. North Korea must apologize for the 2010 sinking of the South Korean Cheonan warship, which killed 46 South Korean sailors.
If they are so afraid of our anti-Pyongyang leaflets, then they should have apologized for the torpedo attack on the Cheonan warship. Then we wouldn't have sent the flyers.
The activists said they will still send the leaflets and copies of the U.S. film The Interview if Pyongyang ignores their demand. North Korea has condemned the flyers as one of the greatest obstacles to overcoming South-North tensions and has not only threatened attacks but also a halt to family reunions and operations at the joint Kaesong industrial complex.
We've seen in previous cases where North Korea stopped work at the Kaesong industrial complex because of anti-Pyongyang leaflets and limited access to the industrial park.
The South Korean government says it does not have legal ground to curb such civic activities, but has asked the group to make wise decisions. The issue has raised safety concerns among residents in border regions. Last October, the two Koreas exchanged gunfire after the North attempted to shoot down balloons carrying similar leaflets. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, responding to North Korea's latest claim that it would not be afraid to fire off nuclear weapons if it felt cornered, the U.S. has urged Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said Monday Washington time that the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the North is required by multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Harf was responding to an interview given by the North Korean ambassador to Britain, who said Pyongyang would use nuclear weapons if Washington struck with nuclear weapons first. She said Washington remains fully prepared to take action against any North Korean threats, and she affirmed America's commitment to defend itself and its allies. Amid lingering speculations that the U.S. is thinking about deploying its missile defense system to South Korea, more U.S. experts have weighed in on the issue. They say the deployment is the minimum operational strategy necessary to counter North Korean threats. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
U.S. experts are throwing their support behind the possible deployment to South Korea of the American missile defense system, saying it'll make North Korea think twice before launching provocations. Ben Jackson, who served as a policy advisor at the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, said the potential THAAD deployment wouldn't solve all the security issues, but is a minimum necessary measure to sleep in regards to the North's nuclear and ballistic missile threats. Speaking at a seminar in Washington hosted by Asan Institute for International Policy, Jackson said it is better to have more missile shields as long as the price is right. He added that the optimal outcome would be the integration of South Korean and U.S. systems. Daniel Chu, a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, said China should rather start working with Washington on North Korea if it is concerned about the implications THAAD would have beyond countering North Korean threats. Chu also stressed that it is unproductive for China to speak of THAAD's purpose given the nature of Pyongyang's nuclear threats. China strongly opposes a possible deployment as THAAD's radar system, which can cover 2,000 kilometers, could be used to monitor parts of mainland China, including Beijing. Following high-level talks last week, a senior Chinese foreign ministry official publicly called on South Korea to consider Beijing's interests and concerns about THAAD. Seoul, however, continues to stress that there have been no official discussions with Washington on the matter. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And in other international news, we're following the world has been joining Singapore in mourning the death of a legendary leader, Lee Kuan Yew, who oversaw 3 decades of development, transforming the port city-state into a global financial hub. China called the 91-year-old an influential statesman and strategist. Indonesia remembered him as an inspirational leader in Asia. And Malaysia noted that Lee's legacy will be carried forward with the future of Singapore. Starting tomorrow, mourners will be able to pay their respects at the Parliament building where Lee's body will lie in state. On Sunday, world leaders, including Korea's President Park Geunhye, will join Singaporeans in a state funeral. His body will then be cremated in a private ceremony, just as his wife's was 4.5 years ago. A deadly multiple vehicle pileup in Peru has left at least 34 people dead and 70 others injured. Authorities say the crash happened early Monday in north-central Peru after a bus suddenly swerved into oncoming traffic, crashing into 2 other buses and a truck. Local media is reporting a delegation from the worldwide missionary movement was involved in the crash. Initial investigations suggest that the driver of the bus had fallen asleep at the wheel. While deadly bus accidents are not uncommon in Peru, this is the country's deadliest since October 2013. In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. President Park Geun-hye says the promises made on public employee pension and labor market reforms must be kept to ensure the success of future generations. At a meeting with her senior secretaries today, the president referred to the upcoming deadlines for the reform plans, stressing that the reforms cannot be carried out without cooperation from Parliament and related parties. She called on the administration to meet the deadlines through dialogue and compromise. And for the first time later today, President Park will meet with her special advisors since appointing them earlier this year. The 7 advisors were named to help the president strengthen external communication in the areas of politics, civil affairs, security, and public relations. Korea's central banker says the nation's economy will continue to recover, although there are lingering short-term uncertainties. The low key rate is one of the many factors contributing to his prediction. Here's Hwang Ji-hye with the details.
Speaking with economic experts on Tuesday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said he expects the domestic economy to gain momentum. A low key rate, low oil prices, and the weakening Korean currency have combined to create favorable conditions. The central bank cut its key rate 3 times in the last 8 months, lowering it to a historic low of 1.75%. Those reductions were part of the government's efforts to keep the economy on a recovery track, and they've boosted home transactions by nearly 20% in Seoul over the last month. The record low key rate has also led to a sliding Korean won. That's good news for local exporters. The currency decreased by around 5% against the US dollar from a year earlier, raising the price competitiveness of local exporters in the global market. While low oil prices also provide an opportunity for Korean exporters trying to cut production costs, the central bank governor cautioned against too much optimism. He said uncertainties still linger over global oil prices as well as the direction of the Fed's interest rate policy. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
The head of the European Central Bank has been whipping up support for its $1.2 trillion sovereign bond buying program. Addressing the European Parliament in Brussels on Monday, Mario Draghi said there's solid evidence that the regional economy is already getting a boost from its quantitative easing program, which was announced 2 months ago. Currency markets have responded, with the euro hitting an 11-year low against the greenback last Thursday. On rising deflation fears, Draghi predicted that the inflation rate of the Eurozone would pick up by the end of this year due to a rebound in oil prices and the depreciation of the local currency. Now, a study conducted by a local think tank says Korea has a high level of social conflict in comparison to rankings for 24 other OECD member nations. And apparently, these divisions are taking a toll on the economy. Kwon So-ah has the story.
Poor communication between the government and the people, the gap between the rich and the poor, disputes among politicians. These are just a few factors causing social conflict in Korea. The nation's social conflict index was the 5th highest among 24 OECD nations ranked for a study by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs. Only Turkey, Greece, Chile, and Italy found it more difficult to deal with social conflict than Korea, but many more countries handle it better than Korea, with Sweden having the least problems. Researchers say the way a country deals with social conflict is reflected in its economic growth, and they stress the importance of cohesion in areas like politics, economy, and social culture. In terms of the figures that deal with factors that trigger social conflict, Korea ranked 4th out of 24 OECD nations. According to the study, a 10% reduction in social conflict can increase the GDP per person by around 1.4%. Due to this correlation between social cohesion and economic progress, experts say the government needs to manage these problems better. Korea's social conflict management index is among the lowest in the OECD, ranking 27th. Denmark was the best in dealing with conflicts, while Mexico was the worst. But data shows there has been improvement, as back in 2000, Korea was nearly rock bottom and has gradually climbed the ranks. Experts say that if the Korean government formulated better policies and regulations and did more to tackle growing inequality, there would be far less conflict and the economy would feel the benefits. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
It's less common to see people with tuberculosis in developed countries than developing countries. That said, what's odd is that although Korea is considered a developed nation, it still has one of the highest tuberculosis mortality rates in the OECD. Kim Ji-yeon has more on this story.
This patient, identified only by her surname Chung, recently found out that she has tuberculosis. She says she's been coughing constantly since last fall and often experiences shortness of breath.
I've been stressed recently due to problems at home. I couldn't eat very well.
Chung is one of the 35,000 patients who were recently diagnosed with tuberculosis in Korea. The country sees nearly 8 times the number of TB cases compared to the OECD average. Korea has one of the highest fatality rates from the disease among member countries. More than 2,200 patients died in 2013 alone. Doctors say it's important to wash your hands thoroughly and detect tuberculosis in its early stages. They advise getting a medical checkup if coughing lasts for more than 2 weeks.
Patients delaying treatment are highly likely to suffer from hemoptysis or coughing up blood. Tuberculosis patients that enter the intensive care unit from cases like these, the mortality rate is close to 100%.
In response, the Ministry of Health and Welfare is increasing efforts to eradicate the disease. It's dispatching around 400 medical personnel to community medical centers across the country so that each tuberculosis patient can get more intensive attention. The ministry is also cutting the cost of treatment. Starting in 2016, tuberculosis patients won't have to pay a cent for medical help for the disease. Overall, the ministry expects to reduce the number of TB patients by half by 2020. Kim Jeong, ARIRANG News.
Now, most of us have had the experience of trying to remove water from our car windows, camera lenses, or glasses without leaving smears or smudges. It can be a real hassle sometimes, but a research institute in Korea claims to have solved the problem by taking hints from our natural surroundings. Lee Ju-yeol tells us more.
Driving in the rain can be dangerous, especially when you can't clear your windshield properly. A research team at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology has developed a solution to that problem, and they took a few cues from nature. When you look at a flower petal, water rolls right off it. So the scientists tried to emulate that action by adding ultra-microscopic bumps to the surface of the glass.
We specifically apply nanotechnology because we wanted water to bounce off the glass.
With the help of the nano bumps, the glass stays waterproof, fog-free, and dust-free. This latest research has been published in the online journal Scientific Reports, and the lead researcher says demand for this weather-resistant glass is high. It can be applied to three-dimensional curved surfaces, as well as car windows, cameras, or eyewear. Until now, the manufacturing process to incorporate nanotechnology was very complicated, but domestic researchers simplified it and used water instead of chemicals.
The manufacturing process is simple and eco-friendly. If we can continue making them in large amounts, I think we can make them available to consumers in 2 to 3 years' time.
Until then, stay dry and drive safe. Lee Ju-yeol, ARIRANG News.
In sports news, one of Korea's most popular swimmers, Park Tae-hwan, has been banned from the sport for 1.5 years after testing positive for a banned performance-enhancing drug. The ban casts a long shadow of doubt over whether the former Olympic champion will ever swim competitively again. SJ Lee reports.
Korea's Marine boy Park Tae-hwan, who tested positive for testosterone last fall, was hit with an 18-month ban on Monday following a short hearing at the Switzerland headquarters of the world swimming body, FINA. The ban will remain effective until March 2016. In theory, that means Park could still take part in the 2016 Rio Olympics, but he will certainly miss the 2015 World Championships in Russia this summer. There had been concerns Park would be hit with the maximum 24-month ban, which would have definitely counted him out of Rio. Park maintains that he never knowingly received shots that contained any banned substance. The verdict means all of the swimmer's results after the positive dope test have been declared void, and he will have to give back the 6 medals he won at last year's Asian Games in Korea's western port city of Incheon. Park, with his good looks and clean-cut image, has been a widely popular sports star and product endorser in Korea and elsewhere in Asia, and his swimming record prior to this scandal speaks for itself. On top of his many Asian Games titles, Park won a gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle and silver in the 200-meter freestyle at the Beijing Olympics in 2008. He also snagged 2 silvers at the 2012 London Olympics and golds at the 2007 and 2011 World Championships. So while this ban is a major setback and tarnishes his legacy, his legion of fans will hope he can stay focused and make a triumphant comeback at the Rio Olympics. SJ Lee, ARIRANG News.
Theater performances can make us laugh or cry. sometimes both, but they can also transport us back in time. Our Im Geunhye joins us today with a couple of plays that take audiences back to a time when the wounds of the Korean War were still fresh. Hello there, Yeonhye.
Hello. So today I have for you two plays. Now the first is set decades after the Korean War, but the performance revolves around events that took place during the war. And the second includes issues about mending family ties that were damaged during the war. Now both are very heartfelt stories with some reputable faces. Take a look.
A peaceful Hanok home sits at the center of this stage. The home belongs to an elderly couple who got married in the midst of the Korean War. But now they find themselves facing a new ordeal. Their son has gone missing, and their neighborhood has been plagued by a deadly disease. The couple are the last ones left in an abandoned village and must come to terms with leaving their home.
집은 오래 비워두면 안 되는 게야. 비워줄 땐 비워주더라도 돌아가야지.
The play, Snow in March, tells a moving story of an elderly couple closing the door to a chapter in their lives.
Twilight usually gathers on one side, but on the other side, you can see the new morning arrive. In this production, similarly, you can see both creation and extinction.
The second play takes place while the dust from the Korean War was still settling. The award-winning Kyung-suk's father is helmed by notable director Park Tae-hwan. The father in the play abandoned his family at the outbreak of the war, trying to save himself. And while the mother feels both love and hate for her husband, their intelligent daughter shoulders the family's responsibilities. This production is about love and forgiveness in the aftermath of war.
I feel like I've seen Kyung-suk's father before. Was it staged on theaters before? Or?
Yes, so actually it's back for the first time in 5 years after being dormant for 5 years, but it was also made into a 4-part TV drama series 6 years ago. It also went by the name My Father Loves Trouble. Now, it was very popular, but this play does include a very exceptional cast, so you definitely want to go see the play.
Right, I think that's the TV drama was the one that I recognized, I think.
Right.
So the first performance, I think I also recognized the lead actor or actresses there.
Right. So you did see her a couple weeks ago. I brought in the play Mother. Now she was the main leading female character in that as well. Her name is Hyun-suk. Now she is one of Korea's leading actresses, and she's just really is exceptional at playing these mother-type roles that carry very deep, burdensome, troubles and emotions. So she does an excellent job on the stage, really just portraying that. And so this is another award-winning performance that you really do want to go catch.
Right. She is, of course, the legendary figure in the theater community, and also I think I saw Shin-gu in there. He's also one of the veteran actors in Korea, very legendary figure.
Right.
So these two
cast,
plays, will be worth checking out. Okay, thank you, Yeonhye, for coming in today and sharing this report with us.
You're very welcome.
Hello, Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Cold wind continues to blow across the country. However, skies are looking clear and mostly sunny today. Now, today's daytime highs should be on par with or slightly higher than yesterday, but with the wind chill feels like a chilly 8 degrees. Now, the cool gusts are expected to calm down by tomorrow afternoon, so make sure to bundle up until then. Dry weather continues to get worse and alerts are still in effect over most of the regions, and in fact some areas have now been issued a more severe warning. Now there won't be any rain for a while to provide some relief, so drink lots of water and watch out for fires. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at the readings for today. Seoul will be getting up to 13 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top into the lingers in the teens. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju gets up to 11 as well. Dokdo hits 7, while Mount Geunhye will be sunny at 1 degree. That's all for now. I'm Seoul Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.